mean, if this was the
Hello, it's Brian.
We'll just get started in a couple minutes here. John, can you hear us okay?
I can. Are you alone?
No, Robert and Julia are here, and so is Doug Olmsted, and John's on Zoom with us.
Okay, can you hear me now, Jacob?
Yes, sir. Thank
Okay,
you.
good.
Hi, John. This is
Hello,
Doug.
Robert.
Morning.
Hello, John.
Yep.
How
Evening,
are you?
whatever it is. I can't remember.
Is that Ron?
No.
No, Ron's
Brian.
gonna be on too.
Brian. Hello, Brian.
How you doing?
All right, about 50 seconds here.
Seems like we were just here.
That's right. Good evening. It is 6:00 p.m. This is the regular meeting of the Smithfield Township Board of Supervisors. Please join with me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag,
To the flag of the United States of America.
America, to the republic for which
the
it
republic
stands,
For which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That was fun. Yeah.
Well, we all had the same theme.
Next is row, row, row your boat.
Yeah.
It's like those old radio talk shows where there would be a time delay, but somebody didn't know it. The host was always saying, turn down your radio, turn down your radio.
You're
Okay.
showing your age, Robert.
You got it.
Members present include myself, Chairman Jacob Pride, Vice Chair Robert Levenheim, Supervisor Brian Barrett via Zoom, our Township Manager Julia Heilicke, and our Engineer John Tressler, and Solicitor Ron Karasak, both via Zoom. Announcements, the Black Buffalo 3D floodplain conditional use hearing is going to be on October 26, 2022 at 6 p.m. here during our regular meeting. And also reminding folks of our trunk or treat on October 23rd from 2 to 4 p.m. here at the Municipal Center. There's more information on
sorry.
both.
Jacob, what date is the trunk or treat?
The October 23rd,
Oh, okay, thanks.
and both have pages on our website. That said, our first order of business is the consideration of minutes from the September 28th meeting. We do not currently have draft minutes yet, so I would ask for a motion to table the minutes.
I'll make the motion.
Next.
Motion by Mr. Barrett, second by Mr. Levenheim. Any questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We do not have any public hearings, nor do we have any plans to act on. Ron or John, is there anything you'd like to note for the agenda this evening?
This is Ron. Mr. Chair, and I would just want to note that I had received a call from Attorney Ralph Maturja today with respect to this zoning amendment matter that he has now, since I believe, prepared some amendments or updates to correct the deficiencies. And he was trying to determine when there might be a public hearing in this matter. I told him that the Township Planning Commission will need to review the matter, and it's my understanding that Chairman Amori is not going to place this on the Planning Commission agenda for tomorrow. So that means that we will now be looking at a Planning Commission agenda of, I'm assuming, there'll be a meeting on the second Tuesday in November, which would be November 10. Now, I do not know when the township wants to advertise or notify the adjoining property owners, because again, that has to occur for 30 days, so that I suppose in theory, if the township would decide that it wants to notify the adjoining property owners, let's just say before the end of this week, you could certainly make the second November meeting, but that second November meeting is November 23rd, which is, I'm certain, the day before Thanksgiving. And I doubt that you guys would want to hold a public hearing in the Black Buffalo matter or on this zoning amendment on the 23rd of November. So it may well have to be kicked into December, but I put it out there for you as the supervisors because it's your call as to how you want to do this.
Okay, Brian Barrett, I'd kick it into December. You know, it's not our fault. It was their non-diligence, if you will.
Right. Well, there's no way we can make November 9, even if you wanted to, because
it's my wife's birthday.
Okay, well, even
That's
more
right.
reason is the fact that we can't notify the property owners within 30 days because there's less than 30 days to November 9. And again, I don't believe that the board, although I don't want to speak for the board, but the board will want to meet the Wednesday before Thanksgiving for this matter. So if that's the case, well, then we are into December, I suppose, which would be either December 14th, which is the second Wednesday, or December 28th, which is the fourth Wednesday.
How about
The
early
14th
December? Yeah, the 14th, Jacob.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I think, probably at our second meeting this month, we'll talk about the November meeting schedule just because of the holidays and how chaotic it may be. But I have no problem with December 14th.
Nor do I.
All right, so what I will do then is I will contact Mr. Maturja. I told him I would raise this matter this evening. And then report back to him, so that's one less thing you or Julia need to do. And then somewhere internally in the township, we have to make sure that we're going to get the amended petition and notices out 30 days in advance of that December 14 hearing.
And if we don't, it's going to be 30 days from then.
Well, if we don't, then we have to just keep kicking it back because the property owners need to be given 30 days notice because it is a map change. It's not just a plain old zoning change where the adjoining owners don't need to get notice. It's a map change where that has to be done. And in fact, the township did that itself for the most recent map change, and where a couple of items were added to the ED zone, I believe at the request of the township.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Sounds fair. John, do you have anything you wanted to note?
No, I have nothing new to add, Jacob.
Great. All right. That said, we'll continue on to new business. Our first order is the consent agenda. We have 3 items in the consent agenda, which is the advertisement for a public notice for CPA services, as is traditional. Resolution number 508, the waiver of the real estate tax penalty, which Ron had emailed us about, as well as the approval of the written decision in the Shawnee Holdings Inc. conditional use, which is what we most recently had regarding the bridge at Shawnee. So at this point, it'd be appropriate to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Mr. Levenheim. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Barrett. Any questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Next is a discussion with regard to zoning ordinances, and it says solar fields on here, but it also should include discussion of warehouses per our motion at our last meeting to declare the ordinance defective in regard to warehousing. We also have definitions in the ordinance that relate, or we have uses of the word or the term solar fields, but we have no definitions of the term, and they're both similar industrial uses. So I felt it was appropriate to gather the board's feedback, seeing as at our next meeting, we have to pass a resolution that identifies the deficiencies in our zoning ordinance and identify, solutions so we can adopt our own curative amendment in about 6 months. So that said, Julia, do you want to give us a little background in regard to the lack of anything for solar fields?
Sure. So pursuant to the last meeting, the board had discussed activating section 609.2, procedure for municipal curative amendments to the MPC. You guys had initially discussed doing it only for warehouses. It became a very great time that Ken and I were in the process of discussing solar fields and the lack of zoning ordinances surrounding solar fields, solar energy farms, facilities, projects, and accessory solar energy systems in the township. This has the potential, if a solar farm wanted to come in, they could 302 us, and we would be back where we started with another older project. So in the interest of protecting the township while we develop these resources, I had sent an email out to the board, I believe a couple weeks ago, maybe a week ago, asking if you would be willing to include a solar field update in the 609.2 declaration.
Julia, who made that request?
That was me,
Of you?
yes. Because our zoning ordinances don't say anything about solar. So if somebody wanted to come in and drop a plan on Ken's desk tomorrow about solar farms, we have no zoning ordinances, no setbacks, no, it's allowed in an industrial zone, but it's not allowed in residential. So that's a very big liability for the township that I would like to sidestep and avoid having a massive solar farm potentially go into a residential area. So I emailed you, I believe it was about a week ago, asking that solar fields be placed on the 609.2 designation as well. So we can address the fact that our zoning ordinances do not define the uses or provide any allowable uses, conditional or permitted in any of our zoning zoning areas currently.
And that's our curative amendment, is it? Our own?
Well, yes, it is our own.
Right. So
Okay.
we would
All
have
right.
the option to say our zoning ordinance isn't good enough when it comes to solar. We need to make it better. Once
Oh,
that
yeah.
resolution is passed, which is what the board would be considering doing at the next October meeting, so the 26th. At that point, we have 6 months to go over, generate an ordinance, create the definitions, come up with the setbacks, all of the requirements that a solar energy field would need to meet. And then we would be able to pass it, I believe, before April 26th would be our deadline. And in the meantime, a solar farm could not come to us with a plan and say, you don't have anything in your ordinances, therefore you must allow us. Because we'd activated section 609.2, we have that protection for those 6 months.
Right.
Julia, this is Ron. you had said that the present ordinance permits solar in commercial or business, but not residential, or did I get that wrong?
So our current zoning ordinance mentions solar twice. Both times when it is referring to the fact that it is not allowed within 1,000 feet of the Appalachian Trail. Past that, we have no definitions, we have no permitted uses, we have no zoning district allowable uses, we have nothing that mandates solar. So the deficiency that we could define as far as this goes is the fact that it's simply non-existent in our ordinance.
Okay. And what's the deadline again? April, you said 24th?
It's either April 24th or 26th. If the board
Okay.
passes the resolution on October 26th, we have 180 days,
Right.
which I believe falls exactly on our second April meeting.
Well, let's double check that it's not 180 days from the initial motion to declare that it's defective. I just want to make sure of that.
Yeah, I'll check that, Jacob, or Mr. Chair. I'm not quite sure.
No, I've got that answer. So section 609.2, section 2 says within 180 days from the date of declaration and proposal, the municipality shall enact a curative amendment. When you go back, it says within 30 days following the declaration, following such declaration and proposal, the governing body shall, by resolution, make specific findings. So then we've got, actually, I might have done my math wrong. But those are the sections that you can reference, Ron. You can come up with the viable timeline for us.
Okay, I just wanted to make a note.
Then you still have to go forward with an ordinance, right?
Right,
But
so
Is that meaning that?
at
No, go ahead.
at the September meeting, the 28th, the board discussed and said, hey, we have a problem. I believe, Ron, that's considered the declaration.
That
Or
is, and in fact, I have in my notes that I need to get the resolution prepared so that we can adopt it at your meeting on the 26th. And
Correct.
this discussion is important because I need to know what to put in the resolution as to why the township believes its zoning ordinance is deficient, whether in solar area or warehousing area. I don't need to have the full panoply of things, but I need to have some basic information. So, and I have enough, I think, here now for solar. I don't know where we're going with the warehousing by way of what we have and don't have.
Once we pass the resolution, we're just really saying that we're heading in this direction. We can't prevent anybody from applying under the current rules until we pass an ordinance. Is that true?
No,
That's correct.
once you do the resolution, all people must now, everything stops until you pass your ordinance.
Right, and what Ron is saying, Robert, is that the resolution that the board needs to pass to stick to this timeline that needs to occur on October 26th, according to the MPC, needs to reference specific uses which are either not permitted or not permitted in sufficient quantity, reference a class of use or uses which require revision, or reference an entire ordinance which requires revision. That last one is a little bit too big for us to chew off right now. So we need to be able to give Ron specific deficiencies in our ordinance related to warehouses. One of them, for example,
Right.
handle. The fact that it doesn't exist at all, we don't need to comment on that. Ron says he's got enough of that. The issue now in front of us is warehouses. So one of the things could be then we don't have a square footage
The
designated.
definition is
What is that
ambiguous. The definition could be interpreted as any sort of storage.
Well,
All right,
I think
well-
it's-
Yes, it is, yes.
I think the warehouse question is possibly more complex than the solar because, first of all, it's about square footage, but it's also about whether a warehouse is just something where you store and transfer goods, or is it also a manufacturing area too? If it's both of those, when we already have manufacturing in the E zone allowed, does this affect the square footage? Is this considered a different use than a warehouse, like a warehouse slash something else? Is there more footage that's allowed if it's two uses? You know, it gets kind of complex. And just as an example, let's take Walmart, for instance, here, which is, I think, probably about an 80,000 square foot building. But Walmart and I think Home Depot as well have started using those buildings as partial warehouses, because what they're doing is they're doing direct delivery shipping out of there. So the warehouse, well, okay, part of it's commercial, part of it's warehouse. It just seems to get very cloudy as far as how we define this. I just think it needs a little more study than the other one. I really don't know the answers to it. I thought I did last week.
Well, we're gonna have some time to come up with the solutions, but this will identify the problem.
Well, we can say that it's a problem, but if it stops everything, I don't think that's fair either, that the developer might have something on the books to do quickly. It's just stopped for 6 months. I mean, I don't know of anything we have right now, but
Not necessarily 6 months. It could be sooner. It's just that's the maximum time permitted. I do think there are some clear examples that we got from adjoining municipalities and others in the region from Eric Koopman at the Planning Commission. Plainfield and Coolbaugh, Pocono's developing theirs. I think there's a couple others. But I think we can do something in a fair and efficient manner. But I think,
agree.
Ron, this just identifies the problem. We don't necessarily have to propose all of the solutions in detail in this resolution, correct?
No, the resolution simply identifies what the issues are. And for the warehousing, it may well be, hearing Supervisor Lobenheim talk, that it's maybe just a definition. Is it going to be storage? Is it going to be storage and distribution? So for warehousing, I can just say that the definition is ambiguous and we need to define that in more detail. Now, whether or not you want to also then put in where the warehousing should be permitted, that our ordinance doesn't cover that correctly. Well, I don't know if it does or not, but I can put that in. But the definition that being ambiguous covers a lot of ground, and I agree. Then you don't need to do that for the resolution. Once the resolution is acting, now you got 6 months to fish or cut bait with these new amendments.
And Ron, how about before if the resolution is kicks in, are we vulnerable?
Well, no, because you have, as the township said, you know what? We have looked at our ordinance, and probably it's correct that our ordinance is not as clear, is not as transparent, is not as open as it should be. So we are going to make changes to it. And so that's what the municipal curative amendment is. It's not a landowner curative amendment. It's not the landowner making the request like happened.
I know that, right.
This is the
township.
township.
Does that start tonight?
That starts I believe, when the resolution is passed. Now, I'd have to check.
How about the intent?
When you say
the intent to pass this resolution.
I don't have the ordinance or the MPC in front of me. I'm told that Julia may, so she may be able to check that now, but it's either the last meeting or the meeting coming up when the resolution is going to be passed.
Yeah,
Okay.
Brian, for the meeting that I was not present at, the September 28th meeting is when the board made the declaration.
Right.
And then within 30 days following, I'm reading the MPC here, section 609.21. Within 30 days following such declaration and proposal, the governing body of the municipality shall, by resolution, make specific findings setting forth the declared invalidity. Oh, dear, sorry.
Invalidity.
Invalidity.
Right. I guess my question, Ron, is simply that at that meeting, we made it clear that that is our intent. Now, does that in any way prevent anybody from coming in before the resolution?
Unfortunately, Brian, I don't have the statute in front of me.
I
Julia
think
was,
there's a, I
Julia
go back
was
to,
reading it and we cut her off. So let her finish reading it and then maybe we can find the answer.
I think, Ron, she did finish it, but that's what you think. Okay.
All right, let's let Ron do some research, but we're done on this topic. Next is the
Okay.
consideration for the Smithfield Gateway request to reduce their letter of credit, which they had sent earlier today. Doug is here and he can explain that and give us a general update on the project.
As far as the request to reduce the letter of credit, the original letter of credit, when I sent it into the township for the request to reduce it, I included a copy of the letter of credit from the Provident Bank, the 3.6, which is to cover one of the site contracts, plus the 10% escalation factor under the MPC. Plus, there was also dollars in there to help cover for inspection services. And it's time to renew that letter of credit. And we're in excess of 70% complete on the project. Matter of fact, the new invoices that have come in from the contractor and will be submitting to the township engineer for review have it as just a hair over the $1 million, but we're asking for reduction from 3.6 down to 1.5, which will be enough to cover the rest of the improvements based on the last approved release request, plus the 10% escalation factor, plus a few extra dollars for the inspection services that would be related to that. So instead of paying the fees on the full 3.6 million, we're asking that we allow to renew that and want to do that by motion so that once the minutes are available, we can provide that to the bank that to let them know that the township is okay with the reduction to the 1.5.
John, do you want to make a comment on that?
No, I mean, as long as John is comfortable with the fact that the amount of retainage, if any, and I don't have the letter in front of me, or if it was sent to me, I didn't print it off. He's comfortable with that, you know. I mean, I'm okay with that.
Jacob, we did review
When
it.
was that letter sent? Doug?
Pardon me?
Yeah, hi,
Monday.
Brian. When?
Monday.
Monday? Okay. John, did you receive the letter?
Yes, we received the letter, Brian. We reviewed it and we agree with the presentation that Doug made this evening, that based on the amount of work completed to date and that which is remaining, the $1.5 million is adequate to cover that. So we would recommend that the board reduce the retainage to the exact amount that Doug has requested.
Okay, thanks. Thank you both.
Okay. Do I hear a motion that we reduce the letter of credit to $1.5 million?
Make the motion to reduce the letter of credit to $1.5 million.
Motion by Mr. Levenheim. I'll second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much. By way of update, in general, is what's going on as far as the project is concerned. I'll start off with the highway work, which is something that's obviously something that people have to deal with on a daily basis. The original hope was that the entire project would be completed by this Thanksgiving. However, due to supply issues, a lot of the material was not able to be delivered in time to be able to do that. So under the current plan that PennDOT has agreed to, what they refer to as the left side of the project, which is the project on the medical office building side, That work will be between Music Center and the Strunk Albert Engineering Office. That work will be completed by this Thanksgiving, which will allow a stop sign to be installed so that the road can provide access to the medical office building. Then the rest of the work, then they can work as they can throughout the year, but the rest of the project will be completed, slated for completion by May 15th of next year, so that it's done, taken care of, and all cleaned up before Memorial Day of next year.
So what do they say about all of the lane change that they have that extends north of Music Center for quite a while? That when I drive by there, my feeling is, what happens when they have to plow that with all those stanchions there that they have? You know how they handle
I
it?
asked the same thing as to how they deal with that stuff. But since PennDOT is the one that plows that road, and since PennDOT's the one that approved the plan, PennDOT's problem.
Okay. What do they do? Did they plow around it?
Right through them.
Yeah.
And then somebody has to follow behind them and reset them, depending on the snow event, so.
Yeah.
So that's where we are as far as the HOP is concerned, and we will contact the affected property owners, primarily Bart Rubin, Ken Shookman, and Frank Riccobono, since they're the players there, to let them know what that change is, so that they're not expecting anything to really happen on their properties this year. That'll be more next spring as fall, and it'll be taken care of before the summer season gets here.
Are you talking about a stop sign on the entrance road, not on 209?
Not on 209. There will be a stop sign on Mosher Farm Drive, so that people using the medical office building will be able to get access into the site and out of the site to use the medical office building. Which
Hey, Doug, excuse me. Hello?
Go ahead.
Yeah, Doug, how about the pork chop? Is that still in play?
Music Center Drive.
The pork chop will be installed, but we're not doing anything with Music Center Drive this season. That'll be next season.
Okay, all right.
So that'll be done next spring.
We know when St. Luke's plans to move in.
As far as the medical office building is concerned, we've turned the building over to them for their fit out. So their contractors are in there working diligently. Their current schedule has them opening up in February.
Wow.
I'll have to check my doctor's plan.
So that's where we are as far as the medical office building is concerned. Wawa is going through some due diligence. There were some drillers out there checking for, where the bedrock is in terms of how they would deal with as far as tank excavation and the foundations for the building, and also for the phase 1 and phase 2. Wawa's due diligence requires them to do a phase 2 environmental study, even though the phase 1 they've already gotten results for, and previous studies have shown that there are no environmental issues with that site. But since they would be putting in gasoline tank once they're in, that they're going to own that site from an environmental standpoint as a result of that. So they want to make sure that there are no hidden surprises. So over the next week or so, they will be doing some additional testing of their own just to verify the phase 1 results. And as soon as those come in clean, the land development plan will be pulled together in about 6 weeks and then submitted to the township for review and comment, so that we hopefully will be able to start construction on that as soon as the snow clears next spring.
Is there a plan for another restaurant next to Dairy Queen?
Yes, there's we've got a signed lease with the Popeyes. We are hoping that we'll be able to start the land development plan for that. And so that would be coming in as a separate application, but that'll also be coming in for review by the township this winter. So hopefully we'll be able to start on that next week. And then that'll coordinate with the HOP work is concerned so that when they open up, they've got the full intersection taken care of. As far as the building that's proposed to go, that was part of the land development plan approval, we do have the 9,000 square foot retail building. We're just finalizing some of the tenant issues with respect to that. And that's hope that we'll be able to go to architectural design and again, be able to start construction in the spring as far as the 9,000 square foot retail is concerned. I don't know if you've noticed, but some of the site paving work is actually started. So Northeast Site Contracts paving will be basically completed by the end of the paving season. So those two contracts that we have with Northeast Site Contractors will be basically finished up by the end of this year. And the road will be constructed, tying into Music Center, but it will be barricaded off because until the traffic signal goes in next spring, and then we're not going to be able to use that. The public won't be able to use that as far as a way to get access to the traffic signal. So that'll be blocked. Even though it'll be constructed this year, it won't be open to the public until next year.
By the way, I have not received any recent update on Green Light Go. I've tried to, I've emailed Chris May a couple of times and have not received responses. I hope he's still there, but the last I heard, and this was, I think, what, summer, spring?
Yeah.
It all becomes a blur. That PennDOT had changed some of the specifications and he couldn't go out to bid until he knew what the new specs were that he had to bid to.
Well,
You know anything?
for a time, we were trying to wait until some of the control mechanisms were known so that we could have this contractor use the same one so that we wouldn't have any conflicts. But since that was starting to have an adverse effect on this project, the decision was made in concert with PennDOT that, we just had to proceed with the specification because the Go Green grant was a case that you'd evaluate the equipment that was there, and if it had to change, it had to change. So when your project finally goes out to bid, we may get lucky and something doesn't have to change out, but we were trying to potentially save some money on the Go Green project, but since it was adversely affecting the schedule for that, nobody wants to stop this signal from getting in or the other improvements on 209. So the decision was made, they had to be separated because of that inaction as far as that project is concerned. We're still working as far as the stuff with respect to the residential and the other areas behind 209 is concerned. It becomes a little bit more interesting in terms of dealing with pro forma budget and stuff with the changes in the interest rates that we're dealing with. So every time the feds meet and change something, all the pro formas that were put together have to change to match what's going on with that. And needless to say that doesn't necessarily mean the bottom line is going in the correct direction either. But we're just doing, and we're evaluating all sorts of possibilities in terms of how to deal with the property. And we're looking at various options also with respect to Chelsea, which is owned by the same developer, but it's not a true part of Smithfield Gateway since the regulations require the split between the two projects because it's split by the state road. Right. And we're looking at various options for that, but there's nothing solid in terms of dealing with that at this point in time. So that's where we are as far as the general update is concerned. I don't know if you want me to try and send you something as far as the HOP so that you can put that on the website or something.
Sure, that'd be
These people
terrific.
also.
Awesome.
I don't have anything else as far as updates are concerned, unless anybody has any questions.
That's a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be
Thank
great.
you.
Thanks, Doug.
Well,
We will get you
Yeah,
those.
thanks, Doug.
Minutes. Awesome. Thank you very much. We'll get you a copy of the minutes as soon as we can.
I appreciate it. I think the worst, in the interim, what I may do is to send.
Always send them a copy of the video.
Send an email, that say, did you guys approve the motion last night?
Sounds fair. That's it. Our next order of business is a discussion on our Act 101, Section 902 grant application. Julia, take it away.
Sure. So as the board is aware, we are now a mandated municipality when it comes to recycling. Up until the new census came in, we were doing things like waste pickup because we could and we could afford it. Now we're required to do so, which means that we are allowed to apply for Act 101, Section 902 grants again this year, even though we just got one last year.
Right.
So of course, because we're newly mandated, we're basically guaranteed approval of whatever project we submit, as long as it falls within DEP's guidelines. So there are two facets that I would like to apply for. The first, back when we got our 2021 Act 101 Section 902 grant, we had discussed that because of COVID and other things, the truck cost had increased from 210 to 243,000. I spoke with Barrett Case. We are allowed to apply this round to close that overage gap.
This is
Great.
a dump truck.
That is for the leaf truck
Oh,
to
okay.
replace the one that burned eventually, but this will be the full truck instead of the full behind. So that is a $36,000 difference that we can apply for. We have the option to apply for up to $350,000 worth of funds for this. So the other thing that Ed wants to do is get another leaf truck to help ensure safety. The guys have had the opportunity to use the ones that we have and are very interested in getting a leaf truck with a hydraulic arm. It's easier to manipulate and will, make their lives easier. And if we've got the opportunity to go out for the grant, I would love to do so.
Sure.
I got those numbers from Ed on Friday and put everything together then. We're looking at a cost of $268,000 for that truck. So with the board's okay, we're looking at a total application of $305,000. And because this grant is a 10% match. So we're looking at a $300,000 application, and we would be on the hook for $30,509.31. I've already spoken with Barrett. Everything looks okay. We're working on scheduling the pre-application meeting. He's been out of the office. But this grant does need to be applied for no later than October 28th.
Sounds like a pretty good deal.
Yeah,
Well, if it helps us close the gap from the last one.
it'll help us close the gap, and it'll help us get a new piece of equipment at 10% of its market cost.
Yeah.
I think this is a wonderful decision financially, because of the supply chains and problems. This is not something that we would need to be considering in our 2023 budget.
Yes,
we're
it's like
not looking-
2024.
Right, with the grant application as it is, we would get notification of award in 2023, approximately June or July. We would be able to put in for the items at that time, sign the contract, and then we would apply for the equipment. So feasibly, if we apply for this grant round, we're not looking at getting this equipment until feasibly the middle of 2024.
Makes sense. Not bad. It'll. Sure. Oh, go ahead. Feel-
Can that truck be used year round?
As long as it is used for leaf pickup, DEP gets a little bit convoluted as far as what percentage of equipment you're allowed to use for what percentage of time. For example, they had a really big issue 10-ish years ago where people were putting in for dump trucks and getting grants for dump trucks. And they would say, yeah, we're going to use it for leaf pickup, and it's only going to be for leaf pickup. But then it was being used for snow plowing and hauling and other things like that. And they ran amok of the grant eligibility requirements. So a leaf truck, they could use it year round if they wanted to. And our guys do clean swales when they get stuffed full with leaves. But we only do our township cleanups twice a year, but they will have the option to use the truck.
I've been on the plan for 54 years, and I mean, it's only a small window for 2 months at least.
Which is why it makes it so important to have the number of people and the number of equipment, because, you know, there's only so much you can do in that short period of time, and we need to make sure that our guys are ready to go for snowplow season and not continue to pick up leaves in December.
Well, and that's why I wonder if that can be used year round, because it doesn't make sense for you guys to spend that kind of dollars a grant. You know,
Well, in an emergency, you can certainly use it at any, you know, whatever is necessary.
Right, but by that same discussion, you know, our paver only gets used for however many roads our guys have the time to pave. So it's really important for the township that we can reach all of our services and do it quickly and efficiently.
Especially for $30,000.
Yeah, if we've got the opportunity to buy a $270,000 vehicle for $26,000, boy, gee, am I going after that with everything I can.
Yeah, get me one too.
I'll put you on the list,
I think
Brian.
the last one had a hydraulic
Thank
arm.
you.
Last one it wasn't a full hydraulic arm, I believe. There were components.
I remember there was like a joystick that they
Yeah.
used. Jeremy had showed that to Brian and myself.
It is
Yeah.
very possible where a roadmaster found that he preferred that piece of equipment and it will be a better fit for our
Yeah.
guys.
Oh yeah, for sure. Great. So we'll see where that pre-app meeting goes, but
Yeah, I'll
Great.
keep the board informed as I move forward. I apologize that I don't remember if this requires a commitment letter. If it does, you'll see it on your next meeting.
that's no worries. Next is a discussion on our feral cat policy. This is something we implemented in 2019 and I think for a short time in 2020, where we had reimbursed folks who spayed and neutered cats. I think we did it up to a limited number of cats per person, but we reimbursed $15 because the bill at the time was about $50. And I think it's no surprise that we have a feral cat issue, you know, all over the county. I know the board had discussed re-implementing that policy, and we've had one person come to us asking for potential reimbursement. I think someone who had, you know, was the only person that did it in 2019. I would like to see us re-implement this, so, you know, once, you know, they provide us with a receipt, we could reimburse them, you know, the $15.
Reimbursement $25.
It might have been 25, but
I think yeah.
Yeah, but Smithfield Township residents, right, Jacob?
correct.
And that got a little hairy there. You know, coming in with 2 little kittens and no driver's license and all that. But yeah, actually it went before 2019. In fact, I got a cat here right now sitting with me who has been part of that.
And I remember the discussions, after speaking with Lois, we found nothing
Yeah.
really written in stone about this, that it was only a verbal policy. I know you were gonna dig through your stuff. I'm assuming you haven't found anything, because we haven't seen anything. But with the board's okay, I don't want to cut a check to someone on a verbal policy.
No, I'd
so
like
with
to
your-
formalize it.
Yeah, with your, okay, I will use this as a, let's start writing this policy and get it in place so we can implement it.
Do I hear a
I
motion? to that
agree,
effect?
yes. Yeah, it should be. Should be written.
Okay, motion by Mr. Levenheim. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Barrett. Any question? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Next is a Board of Supervisors report. I don't have anything to note. Brian, Robert, do either of you have anything you wanted to note?
Negative.
I do not.
Okay. All right, so next is our bills. The bills are very limited for this meeting. It includes the payroll of October 6th, as well as a payment to the Teamsters for health insurance. So the total is $31,986.10. Do I hear a motion that we pay our bills?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Barrett, second by Mr. Levenheim. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
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 That said, we move on to public comments. Anyone wish to make any comments?
This is
So-
Ron, Jacob, and I just want to get back to Brian on this issue because I pulled the statute out while you were talking of some other things. And I want to make clear when I say things stop, that's not necessarily true. This is the way the statute reads. Upon the initiations of the procedures set forth in clause 1, and I believe by declaring formal action on the 28th, you started those procedures. The
I agree. Yes.
The governing body then is not required to entertain any landowner curative amendment, nor shall the zoning board be required to hear any matter on grounds identical or substantially similar to those specified in the resolution. So it doesn't mean that a person can't file something. If we have a warehousing provision that says you can put a warehouse in the M1 zone, you know, they can still do that. They just can't come in like Water Gap did and say, well, your ordinance is defective, it's bad, and we want to do this wherever we want to do it. They can't do that when you've started this procedure. And I think it goes back to September 28th.
Thank you, Ron.
Awesome.
It's the
Thank you.
intent.
Yeah, well,
Yep.
the declaring, you know, so.
Great. That said, do we have any other public comments?
Gentleman back.
Tim, go
Want
ahead.
to come forward?
You can do whatever you want.
Can you
Tim.
get through the crowd there?
Yeah. So a week and a half ago at our meeting, there was an item on the agenda to discuss and move to send a letter of understanding to the township regarding our fall removal. I'm just wondering if you got this letter of understanding and what's your interpretation of this letter of understanding?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, so Solicitor Karasek had reviewed it and he believes that there should be some formal agreement beyond a letter.
And
So-
did you get this letter?
He did receive the letter, yes.
Can you read it to us?
I don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
But I think the intention is to formalize, you know, an agreement that, you know, matches the spirit of what we're trying to do.
Because we get, the transparency back there is pretty vague, so.
We want to have a vote on it in an open meeting. That way we can formalize it.
So then you can't even pick up our leads yet. Until this letter is.
I mean, that's not necessarily true, but you know, it would be better to have it formalized rather than verbal. And the same goes for working with Middle Smithfield too, is Ron's opinion, right, Ron?
Well, again, if there is going to be joint cooperation between municipalities, there should be more than just a letter. There needs to be an ordinance adopted by the municipalities in question. Let's say you're going to work with the Delaware Water Gap for whatever. There's got to be ordinances enacted by both municipalities, you and Delaware Water Gap. And then there needs to be an intermunicipal agreement signed and prepared as to what exactly is going to happen and who is going to do what, because you have issues with, for example, workers' compensation. The Water Gap person is working in the township, or the township person is working in the Water Gap. Someone gets hurt. Now, what insurance company is going to pay for what? So there are issues that go beyond simply a handshake, which if it was 50 years ago, that would be fine. That's not the way it is now. And I would not recommend simply proceeding with the letter. I would recommend the ordinance and intermunicipal agreement. And although that's probably time consuming and expensive and costly and delays, I just think that's the way you need to do it, especially if again, someone gets hurt or even killed in some kind of operation outside of your jurisdiction.
And
You're really
we
optimistic.
used to contract with Middle Smithfield Township and paid them. So I don't know if that's the same setup or not. It doesn't sound like it. We paid for that service. And I don't know what the writing was for that, but we would ask them,
Mhm.
usually in September.
Jacob, who's speaking?
Tim Snow.
From Delaware Water Gap.
Who's that?
Tim,
From Delaware Water Gap.
Who are you?
I'm Tim from Delaware Water Gap.
the resident of
Jim.
Delaware Water. Tim Snow. He is a resident of Delaware Water Gap.
Marty's my cousin. How's that? No?
No, I think to your point, Tim, and to what Ron said, we're gonna have a formal agreement, but not just for this, but also with Middle Smithfield, because we exchange services for the road crew all the time, and
We exchange services, but we were actually paying for that service in Middle Smithfield.
correct, our intent was to exchange services the same way.
Well, if they were paying Middle Smithfield, did they need a municipal agreement with them at that point?
I don't know. I don't know how that was set up, but they picked up our lease for the time in the last 8 or 10 years.
Right.
And it went smoothly. I mean, I think we're trying to fix something that wasn't broken.
Well, the cost was beyond excessive. The cost was beyond excessive, $3,500. We calculated the nominal cost, and it's somewhere around $250. So if you'd like,
Yeah, you're gonna find out it's gonna take longer than that.
that's not. It's 4 miles of roads, with all due respect. I know it's not. I've walked every street, well, almost every street.
Ron? Ron?
Yes.
I respect and agree with everything you're saying. The only thing is, of course, by the time we got all this in place, the buds will be coming out of the trees again. Is there any way in the interim we could arrange something so that we have no liability to picking up leaves on an interim basis here, just to get the leaves off the roads and the sidewalks? I mean,
Well,
otherwise we can't do anything.
The vehicle that is being used is owned by the township. So
Correct.
if the township leases the vehicle to Delaware Water Gap and the township is not engaging in any activities, the township's not doing anything other than leasing that vehicle, you may, underline the word may, be able to dodge the bullet with respect to this, but I would definitely call the township's insurance carrier and make sure that we know what happens if someone gets hurt with this vehicle. Is the township insurance carrier on the hook, or is it the workers' comp carrier for Delaware Water Gap, or if it's something in between? But that might work.
Saying that we couldn't drive it.
Well, and I don't know if we've got the authority to speak for how they would want to use their DPW resources.
No, we don't have the authority to speak on behalf of Delaware Water Gap. We don't.
But we couldn't if we leased them a vehicle,
How
we couldn't
about,
lease them the driver with it, right?
how about we have our solicitor contact the solicitor from Delaware Water Gap, review the agreements and come up with something. I don't want to see this delayed any further. This is beyond, laughing.
Well, the worst case scenario, it's business as usual until we get it worked out.
I'm sorry.
That may be a wise idea, to contact the solicitor for Delaware Water Gap and see what he or she has to say, because perhaps I'm being too strict or too draconian and they may have another spin on it. But if we're going to have our people drive that vehicle in Delaware Water Gap, I'm very, very wary in just being able to do that with a lease. If we're going to lease it to them and their people drive it and they're the ones that are using it, then that may work a little better, perhaps.
Okay, thanks, Ron. That's
Do
right.
you need a CDL for that? For that truck?
I believe so. But
I think we probably need a CDL.
yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna say, for instance, they have one part-time guy, but.
correct.
So my other question is, and this is a question I bring up at my meeting month after month after month. Our town council president unilaterally makes decisions without advising the rest of the board. So why was this pushed through so quickly without having some kind of agreement in place other than a handshake?
Well, there was no handshake, but let me tell you, it was, done to be neighborly, and it was voted on at a public meeting, one of our public meetings. It was here, correct, correct. I cannot speak to,
I understand that, but it's just a level of frustration because this is every month, twice a month sometimes that this comes up where he's unilaterally making decisions that could jeopardize. I mean, you're talking workers' comp, if somebody gets hurt, if they hit one of our fire hydrants, if there's damage. It's a big thing, and you guys just invested all this money in a truck, and now you're getting a second one. And leasing the truck, we only have one part-time people.
no, of course, and we're gonna be in touch with Solicitor Huffman, and we can work this out. This is beyond the scope of what was initially, thought. We've done this type of reciprocation with Middle Smithfield all the time, and it's never been, this is the first time that solicitors ever insisted there'd be some sort of agreement. So I'd like to see, that worked out between them too. But we anticipate by our next meeting, and hopefully, potentially intermediately, we can get something over to Solicitor Huffman, and then your council can take whatever action is necessary.
I said at the public meeting, it's true, we should have been in better communication, more attentive to that. So we'll try.
No, we can't guess what their council will do.
Right, and maybe if they would up front and not calling it free. I don't know what the agenda was called free, but you even said it's not free.
Correct. Correct.
And
It's
now
not free.
Now, it's definitely may not be free because you might have to lease your.
Well,
And do we have a date of when the lease pickup will?
yeah, our leaf collection is slated.
November 24th, but. we have-
Correct. No, so
2024 to the 23rd.
okay. That said, no, they just routinely would drive through the township. There's not necessarily set days. They would just go through all the territory because people put their leaves out at different times. So we don't necessarily say, have your leaves out by X date. They kind of do it regularly. It's not necessarily,
They'll be coming through water gap regularly too.
they have to pass through it, so.
If those leaves sit and they get really wet.
The people who designed this have handled everything from wet leaves to soaked leaves to crispy leaves to leaves with cigarette
I
butts
don't
in
want to keep
them.
my leaves out for like a week before it.
Understood, and we can get you some more certainty in that case.
Narrow it down just a little, 'cause that's what we used to, having 3 days at Middle Smithfield would come, and then they would come a fourth time if we had anything.
Yeah, I mean, we could potentially, because it's, square mileage, is about 4 square miles, we can certainly,
We're gonna follow you across the first day, because I absolutely am going to time how long that's going to take. I'm just telling you, because you are woefully underestimating the amount of time.
okay, well, I'm gonna rely upon my, roadmaster, so.
No, and I understand that, I'm just saying, so I will be back at the meeting to say how long it did actually
Okay,
take.
I believe you. I believe you. Okay, are there any other public comments before we entertain a motion to adjourn?
Let me just say one other thing, Mr. Chair. And in the Intergovernmental Cooperation Act, there were some amendments made. And it may well be that we may be able to, when I say we, the municipalities, rather than enacting ordinances, simply adopting resolutions between the two municipalities as to what specifically is going to be done. And that can happen in relatively short order, as opposed to having advertised and those other things. So I know that the intermunicipal or Intergovernmental Cooperation Act, as it's called, was amended to now permit resolution. So that may help move it along, because I agree with Supervisor Lobenheim that if we have to jump through a lot of hoops, the trees are going to be sprouting again. So that may help a little bit if we just need to do a resolution.
All right, well, we'll have you contact Deb Huffman then. In the immediate, I'm gonna make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll
One
second
more
it.
comment, Tim. Okay.
Um,
One more.
Do you understand that this letter of understanding is just for leak protection?
Yeah.
Just for leak protection?
Correct. Yep.
Is that what you're doing?
Correct. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned at 7:02 PM. Thank you, everybody.
All right, I'm going to be leaving. Everyone stay healthy and stay safe.
Yep, you too, Ron. Thank you.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, John.